I am Saul Kripke. I have written various books on different philosophical, mathematical, and even linguistic topics.
Okay, so you've made groundbreaking work on Wittgenstein. How did you become interested in him in particular?
I suppose because I studied for my undergraduate degree at Harvard, and at least two of the, or maybe three, come think of, visitor two, of the relevant faculty members were very interested in Wittgenstein, and especially the later Wittgenstein, the investigations. But I didn't really come to any view as to why this might really be an important argument until after finishing, and in the following year, in 1962 to 3, did I come on my own take on what he was doing, right?
Why do you think that was original or different from the interpretation people had at the time?
Well, some people do challenge me about this, right? I myself do think it was a different interpretation, and really it was Wittgenstein as it struck me and presented a problem, as I say, right? And well,
do you object to the Kripkenstein term that people sometimes use to refer to your interpretation of Wittgenstein?
No, I think it's all right as long as it isn't, as some people say, means it's a denial that I have understood him correctly at all, right? But it's hard for anyone to claim that she, right, has got the right understanding of Wittgenstein, because, the thing is written in, both the earlier thing and the investigations are written in some style that invites one to wonder what it really means, In that way, it might be more like continental philosophy than like conventional analytic philosophy. But it is mostly really thought to be analytic philosophy anyway.
About that in particular, you think that Wittgenstein did that, on purpose, that he was seeking to get the reader to think on his or her own terms?
Yeah, well, that's what he says, right? He hasn't done this to say things to the reader, but to encourage him, right, to think for herself, right, and so on, right? And I suppose that's right. Nevertheless, in spite of his saying that he doesn't state theses in philosophy since everyone would agree to them, he does seem to be pushing forward certain views and problems and so on, right?
Some people have disputed the term skeptic when it's applied to Wittgenstein. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, he probably would not avow the term skeptic, right? In that way, you might compare him to, say, Berkeley, who thought he was defending common sense, right? Hume actually remarked, well, no matter what he says, right, his views, Berkeley's views, are only skeptical. And I think that might be the case with Wittgenstein too, right? He certainly raises a skeptical problem, I think, anyway, right?
And also, you think that his position ends up being relativistic, right?
Oh, yes, no. And he even says so, like in Uncertainty, one of my critics said, how could the author of Beyond Certainty be an epistemological skeptic? Now, what I was interpreting him in my interpretation of Wittgenstein wasn't really epistemological skepticism, but what constitutive skepticism, right? Nevertheless, I think that, in fact, Uncertainty itself is a highly relativistic book, right? It says toward the end, so if you find another culture who, instead of consulting a physicist, consults a witch doctor, was that what it is, right? What should we say? I mean, if you are condemning them, aren't you going outside our language game and trying to fight the other one? And that is supposed to be obviously wrong, right? And that certainly is relativism plus, right? And
that is related to the question that Anscombe asked him about.
Yes, and even Anscombe, a follower and admirer, right? I mean, she had a piece about this, the question of linguistic idealism, I think it was called. But she says, she asked him, well, what if he had a friend who started to take up witch doctoring, right? Would you be at all embarrassed or opposed to this, right? And he is said to have replied to her, well, I probably wouldn't like it, but I don't know why, right?
About your own position, because in the book you are presenting Wittgenstein's view and trying to present him in the best possible light. But in your own view, what would be your take on the solution? Would you be convinced by it, or would you tend to disregard it?
Yeah, well, I do tend to think it can't be right, that there's something we do which is called grasping a concept, right? And that somehow does determine our answers in the future, right? But I mean, his whole skeptical argument is supposed to show that there is no such thing, so, right? And maybe he thinks really we live by a myth as if there were such a thing, right? I mean, he says someone under the grip of following a rule, right? The answer should be, well, Anscombe translated as a matter of course, but I think the better translation, the answer should be obvious to me, right? Right? To the rule follower, and that is what is the case when someone is under the grip of following
compulsion, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Saul.
Okay, well, thank you.
For more debates, talks, and interviews, subscribe today to the Institute of Art and Ideas at IAI TV.